Good afternoon. I just accidentally minimized the window. Please bear with me. Luckily I didn't close everything. A wonderful start. But yeah, last time I played this, I beat Sengetsu.
I can buy back shards. What are you looking to buy?
Which kind of took all of my medicine.
Is this right? Thank you.
And by medicine, I mean potions.
Thank you.
But it got done, and that's what really matters, and now I've got access to more of the castle.
Are you eating? So, what'll it be?
Oh, it's 4 potions to a high potion, not 1. Gotcha.
I'll go with this.
In my head it was 3.
I'll go with this.
Ooh, I like it.
Something else I should also be looking into doing is, actually eating. Like, these little incremental stat bonuses, I think, will impact my, stack up over time. I like how there's just dark matter here for some reason. That's funny. It looks like a rice ball would be a really simple one. Can I get rice?
Johannes, how was it you figured out a way to stop the crystal from corrupting me?
I hate to say it, but I borrowed a bit from Alfred's research. He was studying ways to slow down objects. My attempts only worked when I placed Enochian script equivalent to what he chose in the same circular pattern.
I think I understand. Sort of.
Do you now?
I understand that you're far smarter than me.
And a poor teacher, apparently.
Yeah, rice. If I can get some rice, I can eat something. Oh, hello.
I suppose you have a point, but...
Huh. We're done talking. I must go.
We're not done talking. And there he goes. Sorry you had to see that. He really doesn't like me, does he? Oh, he's just stubborn. Can I help you with something?
Yes, I'm hungry enough to eat 2,000 of something.
Hello,
Can you hook me
Miriam.
up?
What are you looking to buy?
Rice seed.
Is this right? Thank you. Thank you.
Can I use that to make rice, I wonder? When I first played this game, I basically didn't engage with food at all.
Hi, Miriam. So, what'll it be?
How do I grow rice?
Tell me, what exactly is the Liber Logaeth?
A book written by an alchemist named John Dee. It's written in Enochian script, which is said to be the language of angels. The book has the power to summon good spirits.
But demons are not good spirits.
Well, yeah, you just hold it upside down.
Power is power. If you can summon good spirits, then all it takes is some changes to the structure of the rite to summon something else entirely.
I suppose that makes sense. You researchers come up with some wild ideas.
I wonder if there's like a place where I
Got
can
any
like plant the rice
targets
seeds.
Here's what I've turned up on the monsters.
I'm sure it'll come up eventually. Alright, Dion Sect Cathedral. Let's see what we can find and accomplish in here. I think it'd be really cool if the demons dropped like a shard that gave me cursed fire. Fire a beam in the designated direction that petrifies enemies. Wonder how good that is. 50 a second. Oh. That seems really good. I presume the trade-off is that they don't drop anything. This is fine. Oh, they do drop things. Alright. I kind of want to want... Ooh, sword. I want that. I want that a lot, actually. It did not work out for me. Yeah, I do believe I can get that sword as a familiar. Like, it's a thing that'll follow me around and just, like, attack enemies on my behalf. And the really cool thing about that is that, it's passive. It just works all the time.
I can... What are you looking to buy?
Let's try this again.
Is this... Many thanks. Thank you.
I gotta be sure to actually save my game after stocking up next time.
Hi, what are we transmuting this time?
I'll go with this. I'll go with this. I'll go with this.
Ooh, I like it.
Johanna.
I feel a little bit sad losing the petrification rate thing, but I can always get it again. Yeah, I did play this game in the past, but like I say, I've forgotten what most of the things are like. I do remember that the spell I was using at the end was like a dark beam thing. Though I'm not sure if that's because it was like what I determined was best, or if it's just because I thought it was cool. Bravo Baral. That looks like a weapon. Uses a wind spirit's power to rip foes apart. Okay, so it doesn't deal as much damage, but it's fast. I really do want that sword. I don't know if I want that sword enough that I would farm it right now, but I do really want that sword. I also need to be on the lookout for a way to, like, I guess grow seeds into crops. Sorry, dog, but in my defense, you, had a weird skull ahead and hurt me on contact. I I really should be using my spells a bit more. Heir apparent 1. That's probably a thing that gives me more hairstyles. Though I like the ones I've got. It's nice and long. I wonder if I can blind that eye with like a flash or something. Stone Thaw. For when you don't want to be a rock anymore. Rapid Fire. Basically just Hadouken. Oh, excellent. I wanted this. Bloodbringer. So now I got this sword that helps me, and the cool thing about the sword in particular, if memory serves, is that as the sword, like, stays out and helps kill things, it'll actually automatically level up. Like that. See how much it helped? I like assistants that manage their own growth. Raft work. Oh, this sure looks like the giant fist I'm after. That sure feels like the giant fist I'm after. Ow, my bones. I believe I did save after getting the familiar, so this is fine. Alright, a little bit of extra power, never hurt anybody. Well, except for my enemies. I would really like that giant fist, so I will attempt to get it. I've already made a friend, so like tonight's off to a good start already. Oh. Also, this boss kind of has, like, Zelda boss energy in particular. Also, I like how the first thing it does is, like, pick up one of those things to, like, show you that that's what it does. Like, hey, remember this obstacle? This thing can handle them, literally. Release me. I don't think it felt very inclined to release me. These things happen. the good news is, once I beat this guy, I'm pretty sure the hand is like kind of the thing that opens up a lot of the castle. Not everything, but a lot of it. I don't recall if you can actually use it to like grab enemies. But if you can, that might also be like a good crowd control tool. That'd be cool. Ow. Also, it would take a while, but like hypothetically, I could just stall and let my familiar take care of everything. But I think I'll be just as far ahead, like, contributing, so... Ow. I made a mistake. I feel like that attempt wasn't too bad. Also, it's definitely worth, it's definitely worth canceling the recovery frames of the, shot. By just doing, like a little shot. Shot? What? Doing a little hop and, like, shooting them in midair. I ought to try and remember to spend my MP on that. Release me. Also out. Also out. Hypothetically, I could, like, explore more. Try to get, like, a bit more powerful. But I also feel like I could just, like, try to get better at this. I will say, it does amuse me that, like, 3 streams in a row, I've gotten, like, low-key walled by a boss. Sword fragment. Let's see what's this way. Mithridate and Elm. Oh, kitty, hello. Why had I not come through here before? Oh, right. This thing. Okay, so that's a shortcut I can use if I have the grabby hand. Good to know. All the more reason to keep trying to kill it, I suppose. Melting skull. And then I killed myself by jumping into a demon's talons. These things happen. Well, I learned some stuff about the layout of the castle, and knowledge persists across attempts. So I've got that going for me. I also kind of spent a bunch of mana there that I didn't have to, but I'll be fine. I like how it does a flip. I like how it does a flip on the way in, presumably entirely to Farmora. I kinda got bullied that time. But whenever I get comboed like that, I try to be impressed rather than salty. Oh, level for the sword, we take those. I don't even particularly care how good the sword actually is, I just think that, like, flying swords are really cool. Oh. I think technically I can also equip it as my weapon. Yeah. So like using it as a familiar can also make it like just a stronger weapon. I don't know if holding it in my hand makes it gain levels like having it as a familiar does. I also like how the sword's like, no. We persist. I see a guy in the background with like armor and a golden sword on like the stained glass. I want that sword. I bet that sword does more damage than my sword. Oh. I definitely feel like if I get grabbed by that, I'm probably not surviving that run. Like, it's possible, it's just, it feels improbable. Oh, petrification made. Excellent. actually like deals damage or if it's just like a chance to kill every tech. I suppose conceivably I could like look it up. I don't really feel like that would be like spoilers per se, so much as just like looking up how an ability actually works. So I'm gonna do that, give me a second. Basically, I want to know if it's like useless against bosses or not. Let's see. Okay, this wiki just literally has the description. Doesn't actually give me numbers on anything. Okay, not seeing any numbers. Not gonna spend too long looking for them. Just gonna presume that it doesn't actually deal damage, it's an all or nothing thing. I guess because like it doesn't give me a damage number when it hits something but doesn't petrify it. That's like a reasonable assumption, I think. That hurt, but it didn't grab me, so I take those. I wonder if it grabbing the second thing and throwing it is like an indication of a phase change. Whether or not it grabbing the second stone thingy, whoops, is an indication of a phase change, it grabbing me is certainly an indication of incoming pain. This is fine. I suppose technically I could also, like, hypothetically stock up on ethers so I could shoot more true arrows more quickly. Since that does seem to be, like, my best and most consistent, like, damage source against this thing right now. I do believe that's that. Excellent. Give me your power, please. Thank you. Right bumper, manipulative shard. Craftwork, grab onto certain objects and manipulate them. Basically, it's like, here comes the giant fist. I should definitely save my game before doing anything else. I don't think I can grab that base with this. I guess I should technically have been, like, making note of where, certain obstacles were. Oh, hello there. Unicorn ring. What's that do? Amplifies the restorative properties of items that you use. Alright. I think sitting down makes your MP regenerate faster. There's actually a summoning shard that literally summons a chair. It doesn't actually do anything other than be a chair that you can sit in. It entertains me. That chair was a hallway full of things. There was definitely that one, there was definitely the one that was, like, in the way of the thing. There's also the one in the way of the, chariot guy. Which strikes me as, like, the most obvious, like... thing that feels like a way forward. I'm articulate. There was also an Iron Maiden if I went, like, downwards in the same area, but I don't know if I can move Iron Maidens with it from the front. I'm pretty sure I can move them, I just don't remember what, if any, conditions there were on it. Also, getting the stone masks continues to entertain me. I guess this is a JoJo's reference. Feels a bit like Bugs Bunny when I'm doing that. Doesn't feel particularly efficient, but that's probably just a case of like low rank. If memory serves, isn't this like a watery area? The forbidden underground waterway. Miriam's mobility in water is somewhat limited without appropriate upgrades to memory serves. I will kill that fish to assert dominance, and return to the main castle. Yeah, pretty sure this is blocked off. Bothersome, but reasonable. There are ways around that down the road, just not right now. As cool as that is, I think I'm gonna stick with True Arrow for now. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush and all. Guaranteed 60 damage over what seems to be a fairly low chance to instantly kill. At least for general use. If there's like an enemy with like really high defenses or something, like gambling on the instant kill might still be like a lower average time to kill. Yeah, the sword isn't really doing much right now, but if memory serves, at higher levels, that thing is an absolute menace that just hunts enemies down. Which is exactly what I like to see in an ally, personally. Iron and bronze. Getting a fair number of tomato drops. Not my favorite fruit. Arguably my least favorite fruit. But it does make pizza, which I guess just goes to show that, like, anybody can do great things if they try hard enough. And or get baked into a pizza. This might just be placebo because I'm not stuck fighting a boss over and over, but I feel like my drop rates are better. I don't think there was anything up top that I could grab. So it's always worth double checking. And then I got my butt kicked by a very basic enemy. It's okay, these things happen. My sword is certainly bloodthirsty, which is called Bloodbringer, so I guess that makes sense. I like how the pig didn't even explode, it just ceased to exist abruptly. Okay, so we're gonna get this and move it out of the way.
I'll take you to a place which might be interesting for you. Kindly remain seated during the journey.
I like how she, like, just sits on the edge of it. There's, like, presumably like a seat up there, like a proper one. She's just like, nah, I don't need that. I'm built different. Charles, welcome. Kung Fu vest. It looks exactly like my already existing dress. I will confess to some mild disappointment. While airborne, bring your heel down on enemies like the fall of an axe. But I'm not wearing boots, so... Is either of these a save room? This feels suspicious. 500 gold, we take those. This is arguably better than a save room. Just going here since it's the closest to said save room. But yeah, I beat a boss that was like a hand made out of like broken stained glass. And now I have it. Which I can use to grab things, just not enemies. Or bookcases. Mostly just like statues. But like specific statues. I like that, yeah. Beast Beret. I'll take it just because I felt weird wearing DLC equipment. It felt a little bit like cheating. It felt a little bit like cheating. I need a warhorse's key for that. What's his face isn't here, which I think means I need to teleport back across. While I'm here, I should restock on waystones, I think.
You know, I consider myself a high jumper, but there are places in the castle that even I can't reach. Something's wrong with this place. The architecture seems off. Well, remember, the castle came straight from hell. It's not going to work the way we expect. Who's to say it was meant to be inhabited in the first place? Zangetsu is investigating the castle too. How does he get around?
Miriam, when you fought him, you saw him use a grappling hook several times.
Well, your jump strength is a result of the crystal augmenting your flesh, but his comes from training and discipline that have enabled him to transcend human limits. I understand he has the ability to jump a second time in midair.
Yeah, you can just learn to do that if you try hard enough.
What? He does not? Funny you should mention Zangetsu. He sent a message arrow, which reads, "In the shrine to the printed word, seek the demon bounding across the sky."
In the shrine to the printed word, that sounds like a library. Seek the demon bounding across the sky. Alright.
Well, maybe that demon shard would allow me to jump in midair. If so, it would open new avenues for you within the castle. Is there anything else you need while you're here? What are you looking to buy?
That felt kind of like a hint, and I can use that.
Is this right? Then we have a deal.
I forgot to save money for a wavestone.
What are you looking to sell? Is this what? Many thanks. What are you looking to buy? Is this many thanks? Thank you.
This is fine. Then I'll save my game so I don't have to do all that again. And then I'll go back to where the carriage guy was. So yeah, basically look for something that can, like, fly or something in a place where there's a lot of books. I've already forgotten the exact wording, but it seems like a... It seems like a good enough memory of the hint. If memory serves, this fairy... Ow. If memory serves, this fairy is another familiar. I think it might be a healer. I don't quite remember. can just hang out this piano. If you have that very familiar, and you sit at that piano for like 30 seconds, there's an Easter egg. Summon Blair. Fairy medicine. I don't trust this. Only used by Caraboss. Maybe the way she heals is by, like, using those on you? An unpleasant game of cat and mouse with the monsters forced me into retreat. But then, while stealing through the garden, I noticed that a blue treasure chest I had plundered once before had been freshened with a new item. Who on earth could have put it there? I think that means that blue treasure chests respawn. Or rather, their contents. Okay, so yeah, I can't use the fairy medicine directly. Well, that was unfortunate. These things happen. I presume that if I had, like, a light element attack, it would do really well against those. They seem like the type that's, like, resistant to everything except, like, light or holy or whatever it's called in this game. Though who knows, maybe fireworks on them too. HP, we take those. Oh, almost made it. I'm not sure what's in that chest, but I do know that, like, because it is loot, I want it. All loot belongs to Fox, it just doesn't know it yet. Sadness. But we persist. Fun fact, when I was younger, I used to want to be a fairy. Oh, there we are. Speaking of fairies, recipe for fairy healing items. No longer beholden to random drops. But yeah, I used to want to be a fairy. I still think it'd be kind of cool. But I am a fox. And I'm at peace with that. $500 gold. Release me. Oh dear. Okay, she was tough but not insane or anything. Ammo capacity up. I don't think I want to go down the well just yet. I feel like there's more that I can accomplish out here. He's gonna try and grab me. I think I could stand on that one ox demon thing. Normal potion, we take those. Oh, one more hit from that guy and I'm dead. A true arrow costs 30. I want to use it to kill the bear. Good enough. And I'm hoping that this is a save room. Excellent. We're going to take a 5-minute break here. Please use this time to refill your beverage, go to the bathroom, anything that would take you about 5 minutes. I will see you shortly. Instantly the game goes quiet because it doesn't run when I'm not having it as my focus window. Just in case you were curious. I return.
You! Ow! You!
Ooh, berry. Summon forth Ketabos. Just casually locking that drop in. Powers of Twin Dragons. Suddenly, Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories. Wolfman. He counts as a demon. Beast Guardian. Summon a Wolfman to guard you from frontal attacks. Interesting. Mithrite. Oh, I remember this scene. Or perhaps not. There's a golden chest there, though, so that's cool. Oh dear. Despite me knowing he was there, Wolfman managed to jump scare me. Sir, please hand me the loot. I would like it, it's mine. I killed you fair and square. Sadness. Man really was just like, whoa, lion demon be upon ye. Sunglasses. Protect the eyes from strong sunlight. More importantly, though, they're cool. When I was a child, I was scared of the thought of being, like, crushed between the teeth of, like, 2 gears. As an adult, the prospect still kind of scares me, but I also, like, don't feel like it's as likely a threat. Kind of like quicksand and the Bermuda Triangle. Just overall much less of a present threat than I was led to believe as a child. A sword magically endowed with flight capabilities. That is really cool, not gonna lie. Doesn't deal as much upfront damage as my wolf there, but definitely hits from farther away. Oh, hello. heir apparent 6. Joke's on you, my head has hundreds of pairs. Possibly thousands, I've never counted. Rip. Something something definition of insanity. Fortunately, I'm a fox, so I'm always sane. Shield outsider out. I do think it's kind of cool how this sword can, like, hit them on the way back. There are certain doors that are opened by holding Miriam's arm in front of it. Is this one of those? Didn't think so. If memory serves, I can bounce off of these once I get a thing for that. That was not the right button to push. But I don't have that thing right now, so... just have to remember how to get to the other side of this thing. They say the definition of insanity. Did I just coyote time that jump? Pretty cool if so. I like coyote time. I don't think I coyote timed that jump. I kind of wonder what, like, the deal with the Wolfmen is. Like... if they're like werewolves, let's say, like... why not just be like, oh, I'm a werewolf, that's kind of awesome. And just be like, chill, you know? I give them points for enthusiasm, but I dock a few of them for execution. It is legit so hard for me to tell my way around here, I might actually just waste zone out. It's like I can't use my map, I'm out of options. Maybe I just run like this and it all works out. Okay, I think I'm okay. Can I get up here at all? I can stand on this thing, so possibly yes. Huh, you can underhand those things as well. Nice. Release me. And that was all of my health. Oh no. Well, not all of it, but all of my remaining health. That's unfortunate. And the worst part is, I went right over a save point. There was no reason to lose all that. I guess the question becomes, like, do I want to go back and get the flying blade? Yeah, I kinda do. Ah, that's bothersome. Oh well. Learning moment. I'm back in the tower again. Okay, so if I can get to either side, I just stay down and I don't have to worry about climbing the tower anymore. Gotta keep that in mind. I like how I'm going for ammo capacity, even though I don't really use guns at all. I mean, to be fair, it is number go up. I like my number go up. Third time's the charm. Also, another random thing about this familiar, if memory serves, like, as its level goes up, like, the design of it gets more ornate. Like, it goes from being like a monochrome gray to, like, being styled like Miriam's crystal. I think that's what happens anyway. I also think I can just drop down that one from above, so I don't have to try and do like a little fancy jump. Yeah, if it was just the flying blade I came back for, I might not have come back for it right away. But like, the max HP and max MP are very nice. I definitely want those. he go? Here's a second thought. Nah. Just nah. Pass. I choose life. Shoot. I want it back to the start. Well, I definitely want that sword, so hopefully I don't miss the jump next time. Oh, hey, friend. Speaking of missing jumps, I think I figured out where he went. And he's still not giving me his drop. This is fine. If this were a game where such things were possible, I'd be tempted to save state before the jump for the flying blade. However, it's not, and I'm also not really afraid of, like, doing things the difficult way, so... Let's see if we can't make this happen. Hey. And now it's time to leave. Honestly, aside from the bosses, the enemies aren't too bad. Like, they hurt when they hit you, but that's not a big deal. Like, as long as I don't do something silly like, forgetting to save when I pass by a save room, does not feel unreasonable at all. Oh. Never mind, I misremember what that was. I feel a little bit, bad tearing apart the portrait of somebody looking so jolly. Hyperventilator. Oh, that's another JoJo's reference is what that is. That's the mask that Lisa made Jonathan wear in part 2. To outright force him to breathe properly. Like, if you don't breathe with the right cadence, or if you don't breathe with the right, if you don't breathe with the right cadence for Hamon, it'll just block your breathing. Learn or suffocate.
Jeeble.
Well, well. Look at all the shards you've amassed. How does it feel to command the power of demons?
Wait, when was my last save?
It feels like nothing. Just power. And so long as I'm in control of it, human power.
You're a fool if you think you can soak up that much of their deviltry and still call yourself human.
I'm not the fool here. And I will never give in, to you or them.
Never say never, Miriam.
I have you now, Jeeble. The Liber Logaeth belongs to me, and I shall see it returned.
How are you still even alive? I take no orders from a dead man walking!
And now you die. My next attack will not miss.
Master, you must conserve your energy for King Bale.
So I must. You are lucky, old man.
Grim Reapy built like a One Piece girl. And he's gone.
Lost him.
Alfred, I won't let you use the Liber Logaeth to plunge the world into...
I must give chase while the trail is still fresh.
Man is certainly focused. Well, I was a little bit afraid that I'd be forced into a boss fight. Luckily, I seem to be safe. What was like another fighting game input? I could do that with the Ilfar sword. Oh, that's cool. Okay, I could hypothetically go up this way or drop down there. Or of course go to the left here. I'm looking for like a library more so than anything else. This looks like a library. Ooh, chair. Oh, oh, that hurts. The guy in that portrait looked kind of like Noctis from Final Fantasy 15. Just blonde. What do you succubus? Ooh, cookies. Awesome. I like cookies. Honestly, I don't think there's anybody in this world who would deny that they like cookies. Summons Poltergeist to create a to create a protection barrier. I was gonna say, that enemy seems kinda chill. An emerald? You mean this emerald? Obama chuckled. Rude. Imagine if after all that I missed the jump. That would suck. feel like I recognize this face, but I don't actually recognize that face. Pro mask. Probably like a higher tier Kickstarter backer, if the position of prominence is anything to go by. If I was to guess. I always do think it's really cool when, like... That was convenient. Thanks for finding that sword. I do think it's really cool when, like, Kickstarter backers get to, like, be in a game in a way that, like, doesn't necessarily, break immersion. That staircase looks a bit like a bike chain to me. Now I'm just thinking about that one guy who kickstarted Undertale at the tier where, like, you got to have his OC in the game. And his OC is, like, ridiculously hard to find. You can only find it, like, one day out of the year if you don't, like, manipulate your system day. And, like, even then it's, like, essentially, like, behind a wall with, like, no indication that you can walk through it. You would, like, never find it if you didn't look it up. Yes, I'm sorry. Hello there. Italian. Strange leather. Yeah, this feels a bit faster than what I was doing. Sacred Shade, temporarily increase your stats. Oh hey, Waystone. Above me is the librarian. Half a year has passed since I began my studies of demonology, and I haven't been able to conjure more than a fart thus far. My old friend insists he has seen the Liber Logai have summoned a friendly spirit, that I need only invert the rite. And yet, try as I may, scour the library as I may, I have naught to show for my efforts. I cannot count how many permutations of the rite I have attempted. My methods are correct, it is my materials that fail me. What is missing, a human sacrifice? No, I must try more catalysts. The crystal I discovered continues to grow, ever so slowly. Watching it has become my sole joy. Can we go through here? Yes, I can. Being looking like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Like synchro monster. Andre Althus. I do believe this is my double jump. Aesthetically, I love it. Oh, my bones. Well, luckily, I found the save point before I found the boss. Granted, the boss sword, I guess, was kind of like the giveaway in hindsight. Oh, my bones. Was that a tie, or... I think that was a tie. No, if I keep improving at this rate, I save before missing a bunch of shots. This attempt should be the win. Honestly, I feel like this is one of those bosses where, like, my common weakness of, like, being impatient applies. And if I just, like, approach it, if I approach it without being quite as bloodthirsty, I'll probably be alright. Well, part that and part, like, getting a better beat on how it likes to move. This is fine. The thought occurs to me... This is session 3, I think. The thought occurs to me that if I kill this tonight, technically... At least for the first 3 sessions, I will have killed bosses in like a Fibonacci sequence. Like one boss the first session, one boss the second session, 2 bosses the third. If so, I'll need to kill 3 bosses next time to keep it going. I wonder if... I wonder if the book would, like, do a better job helping. Looks like it buffed my strength. That's kinda cool. I guess it just, like, randomly uses, various beneficial spells. The strength bonus is pretty cool. I could also technically use Caraboss, but it's only got, like, 3 fairy potions. I think I'll stick with my sword. The book's honestly probably better. At least for this fight. I just think the sword's cooler. I was like, I thought maybe I should stick to the book. Sword definitely seems to be having a hard time keeping up with that thing. I think the weapon I'm currently using technically doesn't count as a sword. I guess it does, never mind. And a roundhouse kicked me into a wall, as a joke. You know what's another thing that this boss reminds me of? I don't remember the name, but it's like... It's one of the bales from, or one of the balls, I should call it, from Bravely Default. I want to say Diamante? It's actually really funny. If you go onto like YouTube and you type in Mega Ultra Waifu Chicken, there's a boss fight with the one that I'm thinking of. I don't actually know what it's called, I just think of it as Mega Ultra Waifu Chicken. I can take one more hit without healing. I can take no more hits without healing. I am definitely looking forward to having double jump. Like, the ability to, like, reposition and, like, get out of corners alone already makes it appealing. To say nothing of all the other benefits. That very easily could have been the end of me. And then I hit the very wrong button. These things happen. I meant to do like a slide like that, instead I stood and shot like that. Oh well. I suppose I also could technically, like, temporarily go back to, like, base camp and reslot on consumables, like potions. I do like the rainbowy attacks. They kind of remind me of the Empress of Light from Terraria. But like, keeping that aside, I like rainbowy things. Mistakes were made, but it worked out, so it's fine. Rip. I still kind of wish that I could, like, see enemy health bars. I want to know, like, how well I'm doing. Like, I know that I burned through its health once, so, like, it's not, like, an unreasonable value. There's probably, like, an equipment or a shard or something that lets me see that. I just had a thought. I wonder if I could get to that chest on the upper right early if I let him kick me up there. Definitely feeling like the book is helping.
Arise, myself and my shadow!
I wonder to what extent these things actually protect me. Worth a shot, I suppose. Like, if they could nullify even one attack, that'd be really useful. Nope, seems more like contact damage. Which admittedly, not useless. Not at all. Which is perhaps not what comes to mind first when you say protective, at least for me. It would definitely keep me safe from, like, things like bats. Definitely doesn't really seem worth using compared to, True Arrow, though. Like I say, I've also got room for 3 more potions, and I'm not even sure how many more, like, 5 potions. But I'm not quite at the point to, I'm not quite at the point of feeling like I need that just yet. There we go. That wasn't too bad at all, actually. Give. Thank you very much. Feather crown. Looks like just a really nice accessory all around. Awesome. Or I guess technically a piece of equipment. I did it!
Your story.
As useful as the book was, I want the sword back. I just like it better. That said, I think I'm gonna call it there for the night. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it each and every time. The next scheduled stream is going to be on Sunday. The game is going to be... I forget, what am I playing on Sunday? Did I finish a game and then, like, not pick a new one yet? Yeah, I actually haven't picked a game for Sunday. Oops. Okay. So yeah, anyway, next stream is on Sunday. Haven't picked a game yet. Next time that I'm playing this game in particular is going to be on Monday. I hope you have a wonderful night. I hope to see you again. Good night.